Safe stands as the most innocent globally in matters of carbon emission, contributing only 3.8%. Today, however, the continent is faced with a new threat of increased greenhouse gas emissions, courtesy of pre-existing fossil fuel projects and new ones such as the East African crude oil pipeline and others. Now, this despite global efforts to declare climate change an imminent threat. And that is what we want to talk about this morning, development while conserving the environment. And I'm now joined by Professor Pius Oko. He's a climate policy and development specialist in Nigeria. Thank you so much for making time.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure being in the studio here. I think the professor should be relaxed for now.
Should be relaxed for now. Okay. Start off by telling us a bit of what you do.
Okay, I'm Pius Oko, and I work with Live to Humanity Foundation, but I'm here on the invitation of Green Faith Africa. And so what we do is we push advocacy on issues related to sustainable living, especially with the issue of reducing emission, which is also a major concern for both the people and the planet. And we are saying that policies should be driven towards lowering the emission level for the continent, for the world, and also sustainable practice in terms of agriculture, in terms of also conserving of the environment. So those are some of our messages and push that we engage with government, with civil societies, and also companies.
I want us to talk about the ongoing conference first. Maybe you can tell us about more. It's about the experience sharing meeting for grassroots persons affected by the East African crude oil pipeline in Uganda and Tanzania. It has been a key issue in this particular area. Tell us more about it.
Yes, what we are saying is that the community, the people are going to feel the brunt of the consequences or the effect of what has been happening across the globe with areas that are rich with natural resources, most especially the oil and gas. And these people, because of the work of the oil corporations in those areas, they neglect actually the people, but they go for the profit. And so the East African Pipeline Project is aimed at sinking pipelines across communities. And these people, one, will have their lands being grabbed. They're also going to, their livelihoods options will be limited. And we are now saying, let's come together and discuss some of the consequences of this action. Because we know from inception and also from other places, especially in Nigeria, where I'm coming from, in the Niger Delta, these issues have been concerns over years.
Right.
And we will have to share what are some of the things that are going to be consequential, especially to affecting human and also affecting the environment. And that is why we say, okay, this community should come together, and then these people affected come together and let's discuss and see the way forward, how we could also handle such that is coming.
Right. Yeah. Before we go to Nigeria and talk about it, where do you stand when it comes to oil drilling? Should it be done or not?
What we are saying is a total stop, actually, to oil drilling. Not because we don't want, of course, the profit to be made, but the consequences are enormous. So we don't have benefits from this. And I know we haven't drawn that picture of Nigeria yet, but if you allow me a little to touch down, oil exploration has started in Nigeria since 1956, and commercial drilling started in 1958. And the consequences in terms of the suffering of those people in the Niger Delta, the suffering with regards to their lands being grabbed already, the pollution of the water, the poisoning of the soil. They are not having also livelihood options are limited now because they don't farm any longer. So all of this is now taking people aback. And we are saying that if you compare that to what is expected now or what is coming in East Africa, then it shouldn't be what we should practice. And so there should be a total stop in terms of financing for fossil fuel generally. And oil and gas is a major stake in this, because we have seen from precedents that the people, I mean, the companies don't care about the people.
Right.
And so if you don't care about the people, then that should be a stop, because the people are not benefiting. Instead of the benefit, they are facing consequences from different angles.
Right, you talked about what East Africa is now doing. So maybe give us a bit more details, especially when it comes to the East African crude oil pipeline.
Okay, so the campaign now is that there should be a stop. That's what civil society organizations and concerns group are coming together to say, because we've had this in Angola, in Libya. These are oil-producing countries. Nigeria being still number one in Africa. And so we are saying that there should be a stop, because from those areas where, or those places where this drilling has been on for years, we've not seen any benefit. And so if we can't see any benefit, then this will not be different in any way. And so if it won't be different, so then humans should not pass through this damages. Yeah. And so we are saying there should be a total stop, especially with regards to the pipeline. And these things, you know, the multinational comes with, that's the oil companies, they come with this kind of a cake that they give just for the while, to say there's going to be maybe employment for the communities, there's going to be benefit in terms of maybe revenue generation. Yeah, but when you look at it in long term, the pipelines get on the ground, they undergo corrosion, most of them are not maintained, and those poor maintenance leads to a lot of spills that will now lead to oil damaging the soil. And this soil, we know, these are fertile soils for those communities for farming practices.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, and also sometimes it leads to a lot of fire, where, for example, we are experiencing now in Nigeria a series of spills and a fire outbreak, which most times are not being curtailed. And it means that people are being forced out of their homes again, and that's another big issue. People currently, if you go to a community, for example, Goi in Nigeria,
right,
these people have left their ancestral homes. They are no longer there. They are being forced out without settlement. And these are things that could happen here in the Eastern Africa if this pipeline project continues. Because this burning of the houses and also the spills, the land become unbearable for living again. And so if it's not maybe habitable, then the people will be forced to leave their ancestral homes and no compensation plan for them.
But clearly, what you're saying from Nigeria, the impact is quite heavy.
Yeah.
What is the government doing about it?
The truth is, of course, there are policies. Most times, in a, will I say, preventative way to mitigate some of these consequences. But the implementations becomes the issues. And these multinationals, you know, they are very wealthy, so they have a way of penetrating the system or the government. And most times, you get, let's say, a layback in terms of actions to this effect to the communities. So currently, we have a remediation project which is supposed to be effective currently in Nigeria, but the implementation is an issue because some of these communities are now fully aware and part of, because we try in our advocacy to create this kind of ownership for the community. So the community, most of them, the activities are now part of the system. And so transparency issues becomes a concern because the government sometimes, maybe those contractors don't want to be transparent with the process. And so it's an issue. And another issue is that there are some actions, for example, recommended by the UN after a series of assessments. And now the community can't get access to clean potable water for drinking. And so the UN recommends that water should be transported to those communities daily for them to have access to clean water. But now those things, we don't get them.
They're not actually done. But Like in terms of, stopping it is quite hard to stop it immediately.
Yeah.
In what other way then can you minimize that harm as someone who advocates for...
So we are promoting what we call access or energy access. And energy access means that there should be an open door for investment, especially with clean energy. And now, of course, the world we know, we need clean energy to sustain the environment because we've already caused harm. And Africa has enormous abundance in terms of the solar or the sunlight from the sun, which could help in solar energy. And that is what we're saying, that the practice should shift from the unsustainable energy system to a more renewable energy system, which the solar, the wind, and other very efficient energy sources. They are there, the opportunities are there. So we're calling for an open door, especially policies that will support financing of renewable energy system for the continent. And that will help us to maintain our environment and also to keep check on human survival or sustainability. Right. And also livelihood options.
Coming back here to East Africa, what are some of the practices you've seen being done to make sure that sustainability is put in place?
I think it's the credit, of course, to most of the civil society networks across East Africa. I think the practice or what is going on now is the campaign, just like what Green Faith is leading in East Africa here. Trying to ensure that people get oriented to know what is coming and also the consequences of oil exploration. It's never a win. It's always a lose for the community. It's always the interest of those multinationals and the oil corporation for their own profit. So I think the gain is the advocacy, one, so that people can be aware, conscious of the environment, and also know that this is bad energy, but we should tilt towards a more cleaner energy source. Then the other win or the other progress, I think, is also having media engagement like this so that the policymakers will also understand that this is never a good, maybe for the community people or for the country, countries involved, that we should rather channel those sources of energy, those sources of funding or financing to a better energy source. So this advocacy has been the win, and I think policy direction currently, yes, I would say some countries are also trying to pull together an energy transition plan for their countries, and that will help us now shift from the fossil fuel to a more renewable energy source. And then I think thirdly is the call for a financing model, a better financing model for renewable energy. I know some other countries have also started in terms of maybe channeling some of their sources or their finances towards a green energy source. Because the truth is that we need energy. And I know that is where the argument is. But the energy can also be from a clean source. And once we say clean source, it means we are saying safety for the people, safety for the planet.
Talking about safety for the people then, in that terms, how are you creating awareness to the people, to the communities? Is it going door to door? Is it creating the conferences that's currently happening? How is it done?
Okay, I think one good one, just the one we are still engaging with currently, which is experience sharing. We are now bringing stakeholders together, like a conference that we're having, to share some of the best practices and experience. And once that is done, then it trickles down, because these are stakeholders. Then we also go back to the community. Just recently, that was in September last year, we went back to the Niger Delta to see first-hand experience. So Green Faith led us to the Bodo community, one of the most affected communities in Nigeria, where we have the Bomu manifold. And that manifold is like an oil exploration engine that helps drill and then supply crude oil to the various channels where they are being refined. And so we got there, then to see this first-hand experience, also to interact with the community people, to know the effects of what this has cost them, and also to see how we could engage, more importantly, with policymakers in making sure that we try to remediate some of those consequences, also try to bring solution. And so it's been from both ends, conferences, making sure that we come together and try to come up with the best practices, also going back to the community, getting first-hand experience, and also trying to also speak with the community people to bring them more as champions, so that we create that ownership system of them having also alternative livelihood options. We've also been doing some training for alternative livelihood, because we know some of them, their soils polluted. And it will shock you to know that we went to Bomo and we had harvested plantain with oil. Yeah, you just open up plantain and you have oil within. You have fishes where the local fishermen get fishes, and you take it open and you see component of oil, crude oil within. So it's very deplorable, and some, of course, forced out of their homes, like I said. And this is not a good practice. And in those communities, most of these multinationals promise, but you find out that they don't have access to health facilities, even basic education. It's also lacking in those communities. Access road is also very terrible.
Important. Yes, terrible. Right. Thank you for that. Of course, that is Pius Oko. He's the climate policy and development specialist in Nigeria. We're talking about, of course, effects of oil drilling on the environment. I want us to take a short commercial break here on News Center, but when we return, we're still talking about climate change, and we'll be talking about journey of water. So don't go too far.